My son moved his family into my house after losing his job, but I slowly realized his wife wanted me gone. The first time my daughter-in-law called my house old-fashioned, I laughed because I thought she was joking. We were standing in the kitchen while I made tea, and she was scrolling through pictures on her phone showing me these bright modern homes with white walls and giant windows that all looked identical to me. "You'd be shocked what this place could look like with renovations," she said casually. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Younger people always talk like that. Everything needs upgrading now. Everything needs replacing before it's even worn out. My husband built this house himself in 1987. Not entirely alone, of course, but enough that his fingerprints still felt embedded in the walls somehow. Every room carried some memory attached to it. The scratch near the hallway came from when our son crashed his toy truck into the wall at 5 years old. The small burn mark near the back patio happened during one disastrous 4th of July barbecue. Frank insisted on hosting despite having no idea how to use a grill properly. To other people, it was an aging house. To me, it was my entire adult life. After Frank passed away, keeping the house became important in a way I can't fully explain. My daughter suggested downsizing several times, but I refused every conversation before it even started. I wasn't attached to the size of the house. I was attached to what staying there meant. Then my son Ryan lost his job. The company he worked for closed unexpectedly, and within months, he and his wife were behind on nearly everything. They tried holding things together quietly at first. I only found out how serious things were when Ryan showed up at my door one evening, looking exhausted in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "We might need help for a little while," he admitted. They moved in 2 weeks later with their 2 daughters and what felt like half their belongings packed into plastic containers. At first, the chaos felt comforting. The girls filled the house with noise again. Saturday morning smelled like pancakes instead of silence. I stopped eating dinner alone while staring at television shows I barely paid attention to anymore. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, thanked me constantly during those first few weeks. She cleaned obsessively, cooked almost every night, and kept insisting they'd be out as soon as Ryan found stable work again. I believed her. Then life settled into routines. That's when things started changing. It began with small decisions nobody asked me about. Furniture moved around, pictures taken down, kitchen cabinets reorganized. One afternoon, I came home from grocery shopping and found Vanessa painting over the pale yellow walls in the dining room. I stood there speechless while she smiled nervously with a paint roller in her hand. "I wanted to surprise you," she said. The yellow made the room feel dark. I remember looking around my dining room feeling like I'd walked into somebody else's house by mistake. She kept talking about warm neutrals and modernizing the space while I stood there holding grocery bags like an unwanted visitor. I told myself she meant well. That became my excuse for everything. When my late husband's recliner disappeared into the basement because it clashed with the living room. When Vanessa replaced my curtains. When my granddaughter corrected me after I told her not to eat in the living room because mom says we can now. The hardest part wasn't the changes themselves. It was the feeling that I no longer had authority inside my own home without risking conflict. Ryan stayed mostly neutral through all of it. That bothered me more than Vanessa's behavior sometimes. He always looked uncomfortable whenever tension appeared, but instead of addressing it, he'd disappear into another room or change the subject completely. Avoiding problems became his survival strategy. It also became the reason those problems kept growing. About 8 months after they moved in, Vanessa started talking about the future differently. Not until we save enough. Not when we move out. Just future plans that automatically included living there. One night during dinner, she mentioned enrolling the girls in a nearby school district because we'll probably still be here anyway. Ryan didn't correct her. Neither did I. But something heavy settled in my chest afterward. A few days later, I overheard Vanessa talking to her sister in the kitchen. "She doesn't even use half this house," she whispered. "And maintaining it alone at her age makes no sense." I froze in the hallway listening. At her age, people never realize how quickly older adults become conversations instead of participants in family decisions. That sentence stayed with me for days. Not because it was cruel exactly, because it sounded practical. Practicality becomes dangerous when people start applying it to human lives. The following weekend, my friend Diane came over for coffee. We'd known each other since our 20s, which meant she could usually tell something was wrong before I said anything. Halfway through our conversation, Vanessa walked into the kitchen and casually started discussing knocking down a wall between the dining room and living room. Diane slowly looked at me over her coffee cup while Vanessa kept talking. And in that moment, embarrassment hit me harder than anger ever had, because I realized everybody else could see what I'd been pretending not to notice. I had become passive inside my own life. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying little moments from the past year differently. Every time I stayed quiet to avoid tension. Every time I adjusted my routines around theirs. Every time I convinced myself I was selfish for wanting space in the home I spent decades building. By morning, exhaustion turned into something else. Resentment. Not toward the children. Not even fully toward Vanessa. Toward myself. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped acting like this house belonged to me. That evening, I asked Ryan to sit outside with me after dinner, while the girls watched television upstairs. The second we sat down, he looked nervous. Maybe he already knew. I asked him one simple question. "Do you still see this as temporary?" He stared at the backyard for a long time before answering. "I don't know anymore." That answer hurt more than if he'd lied, because it was honest in the worst possible way. He admitted life there had become comfortable, financially safer, easier for the kids. Vanessa loved the neighborhood. The schools were better. Every practical reason made sense. But while he talked, one painful realization kept growing louder in my mind. Not once did he ask what I wanted. I finally interrupted him. Ryan, where exactly do I fit into all these plans everyone keeps making? He looked stunned, then guilty, then deeply ashamed. And for the first time in over a year, my son truly looked at me instead of through me. The conversation lasted nearly 3 hours, long enough for both of us to cry, long enough for years of unspoken things to finally surface. I told him I felt erased inside my own home. I admitted I dreaded coming downstairs some mornings because nothing felt familiar anymore. I even confessed something that embarrassed me deeply. Sometimes I sat in my bedroom longer than necessary because it was the only room left that still completely felt like mine. Ryan cried after hearing that. Real tears. The kind adult sons try hiding because they still hate looking weak in front of their mothers. The next day, he spoke to Vanessa privately. Their argument lasted most of the afternoon. 2 weeks later, they found a rental house across town. Small place. Old kitchen, tight budget, but theirs. Moving day felt strange. Part relief, part grief. My granddaughters hugged me crying before leaving, promising sleepovers every weekend. Vanessa apologized quietly while loading boxes into the truck. Not defensive this time, just embarrassed. Before Ryan left, he stood awkwardly near the front door looking around the house. I think I stopped seeing this place as yours, he admitted softly. I nodded because there wasn't really anything else to say. After everyone left, the silence returned again. But this time it felt different. Not empty, not lonely, peaceful. That night, I made tea in my chipped old mug, sat in Frank's recliner, and watched the sunset through my floral curtains exactly where they'd always been.